So we just talked about subqueries. We are going to talk about transactions. So we're going to pop back over to the recipe database just for a hot moment. If you hit \L, you should see Recipe Guru here like I do. If you don't, let me just show you how to recreate it. Just say create database Recipe Guru like that, right? You'll hit enter. I think mine's going to say, I already have one, so I'm not going to, but yours would say, okay. You would hit \C Recipe Guru. Okay. If you hit \D, you would see nothing. If you do see something, then you're fine. Don't do anything. If you see nothing there, then come back over here. If you remember, what section was it in? JSON B, maybe? No, the project. So under joins and constraints project, there's two projects, this is the second one. There's this link to this big SQL file. If you click on that, that'll download it. That's my 4th copy of it. Just copy and paste that. And you can paste that here. I'll do it because it just recreates everything from scratch. And there you go. Now you should see this. Select count star from recipes. You should see I have 56, something around there, good enough. Okay, now that we're that, you should see Recipe Guru here. We should be good to go. If you see OMDB there, you're still connected to the wrong database, \C Recipe Guru. Let's talk about transactions, because these are actually really important, particularly for certain classes of database activity, particularly if you're in financial tech like me. So imagine you are writing banking software. You have Bob, who is trying to give $10,000 to Alice. You have two queries there, right? You're going to have to subtract $10,000 from Bob's account, and you're going to have to add $10,000 to Alice's account. Those are two separate queries. You're not going to do them in one query. What happens if you subtract $10,000 from Bob's account, and then in the middle of that, before you can run the second query, your database crashes? Well, you have a massive problem. Bob has lost $10,000. Alice has not gained $10,000. The bank has robbed Bob. I'm sure Bob is not happy about that. Furthermore, Alice doesn't have her $10,000. And if you did it in the opposite order, where you gave Alice the $10,000 first and your database crashed, oh no, the bank is giving away money, right? Both of those are wholly unacceptable outcomes. So we live in this situation now where both of those have to succeed or both of them have to fail. If both of them fail, they might be annoyed that the money didn't get moved the way that they wanted it to, but no one's going to call a lawyer just yet, right? So we need what's called an atomic transaction. Atomic means, like the Greek word, indivisible, right? You cannot divide this. This either all works or none of it works, nothing in the middle. This is something that SQL provides for. Lots of banks use SQL in all sorts of flavors and varieties. And so transactions are absolutely essential. So you need to think about transactions when you have something where multiple things need to happen in succession and they cannot afford to fail, right? Or like you cannot have partial failure, right? Partial failure is unacceptable. This is where transactions are useful. So what will happen with a transaction is you'll say begin, you'll do a couple of things, and then you'll say end, and then it'll execute all of them. So let's say we're making a new recipe, and we want to add things into ingredient. And for whatever reason, we cannot afford or tolerate ingredients without recipes. Just like fathoming that other situation there. So what we would need to insert into ingredients, we would need to insert into recipes, and then we would need to insert into recipe ingredients all of the correct IDs, right? All of the correct connections. So it's a bit of a long query, so we're just going to copy and paste it from the site, but we'll go through it together. Essential, we're going to say begin. Begin basically means we're about to start a transaction. You can also say begin transaction, or you can say begin work. They all mean the same thing. You can also just say begin because we're lazy. We'll do it that way. Insert into ingredients. Insert into ingredients, right? So we got whiskey and simple syrup. You can replace this with, like, I don't know, soda if you don't want to talk about alcohol. That's fine with me too. We're going to insert into recipes, old-fashioned, right? And I have the very descriptive old-fashioned, because again, I should not be writing courses about food. And then we're going to insert into recipe ingredients, and we have to use subqueries because we have to go get those IDs, right? So the first value is going to be the ID, the recipe ID from old-fashioned, and the ID from whiskey. The second one that we're going to add in here is the ID from old-fashioned again, and the ID from simple syrup. Then once we have finished all of that, once we're happy with the state of our transaction, we can say commit transaction, commit work. Those are all the same thing. And then it'll actually go and do all of those. If any part of this fails, if this part fails, everything is canceled. This is canceled, all of it's canceled. But if everything succeeds, then the entire thing is committed in one atomic transaction. So you now avoid the problem of what happens if my database fails in the middle of this, or one of my second queries doesn't work, right? That's what all of this does. So we're going to do this. I'm going to do begin. I am not going to do commit. So I'm going to do this, all of that. I have not typed commit yet. Even though I see all these, this basically means that it's inserted. I'm still in the middle of a transaction. If I say select star from ingredients where name, is it name? It's title, right? Title. Title equals simple syrup. It will come back, right? The reason why it comes back is that according to this session of this person, like this one PSQL session, that has happened, right? However, if I open a brand new tab and I do Docker exec and I connect to it again, and I'm connecting to Recipe Guru, and I say select, I'm going to run the exact same star from ingredients where name equals simple syrup, sorry, title, nothing shows up because that transaction hasn't happened yet. So I'm going to go back here. If I wanted to just blow it up and not have anything happen, what I would do is I'd say roll back. And that would just cancel my transaction immediately. I don't want to. So I'm going to say commit. If I do it again from here, again, it's still there. But now if I go back to this other new session and I say select star from ingredients where simple syrup, now this shows up because that transaction has been committed. Again, there's not really a big performance consideration here. I wouldn't worry so much about that. The consideration here is your tolerance for failure and partial failures. That's where transactions are essential. So, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to tell you about there. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to copy this. I just want to show you what rollback looks like. We can even just do this. And I don't need that. Well, we'll say this is like, I don't know, something else. It doesn't matter. Okay, so we'll do this again. I've done 2 inserts here. And if I'm unsatisfied with how this is going, you can just say roll back, and all of a sudden everything is back to where it was. That these 2 things are not in the database because I rolled them back. Make sense? And again, you can say begin work. You can also say begin transaction if those make more sense to you. Begin is just short for that. Sometimes it's helpful for begin because begin means several things in SQL contextually, whereas begin transaction is obviously very specific to beginning a transaction. That can be useful sometimes. The question I ask myself is like, this is really kind of burdensome doing these subqueries here. You actually can do this with variables so that I can get like the ID back when I do this insert and the ID back from when I do this insert, and then instead of doing these subqueries, you can actually put the IDs from it stored in variables rather than doing subqueries. You have to do it in PLPG SQL. There it is. Sorry, it takes a second for me to remember how to say that always. So I wanted to just show you how to do that. You can't do a transaction inside of a function, but you can do it outside of it. So let's say I wanted to add mimosas. The way that you would do that is you would begin work here. Again, you could just say begin here. I just did work so that you could say that this begin is different than this begin. This is the beginning of a function. This is the beginning of a transaction. I declare variables, champagne, orange juice, and mimosa. I insert into this, and then I return ID into champagne. So that's how you store this into a variable. Return ID into orange juice, ID into mimosa, and I do those for all of my inserts here. And then here into recipe ingredients, I can refer to recipe ID, ingredient ID, mimosa, champagne, mimosa, orange juice, and then at the end here I can commit. Just to show you, that all worked. Here, the do, this is probably the operative thing that you're looking for. You're telling Postgres, I'm about to run a function. So you give it this body, it immediately executes it, as opposed to like creating a function and storing that like we did, where we are actually just creating a function and invoking it immediately. Because we want to do something like run JavaScript or run the Postgres programming language directly. So ask yourself, which one of these do you like better? I'm going to say I probably like this one better, even though the subqueries are a little annoying. Getting full into a Turing-complete programming language in my SQL, not my favorite thing to do, personally. That's really it for transactions. It's just begin and commit or begin and roll back. Everything else here I'm kind of showing you just for fun. And again, you cannot have a function do a transaction. However, you can use functions inside of transactions.